yoga.
All right. Just settling in here. Good morning. It's Sutra Saturday today. I'm excited for this. But we'll begin. First by bringing ourselves into our meditation posture. So if you are on the floor, on a rug or pillow, with your legs crossed, find a position that's going to be comfortable, as we'll be here for just a bit. Now, I've never really discussed the different leg positions while seated on the floor, but I figure if you're already seated on the floor on a rug or pillow, you probably have an idea of what's comfortable for you. Pardon me. But there's different ways of crossing the legs. So maybe another morning we'll just go over meditation postures when I'm in a position to be able to move and show you different positions. But what you want to do is find a position where your legs are going to be able to have continued blood flow, and sometimes you'll start to feel a bit of numbness or tingling in the legs, and sometimes the thought of that is I'm cutting off circulation to my legs. This most likely is not the case. It's most likely just nerves. It's just you're feeling the sensation of nerve sensations. Not nerves as in you're nervous, but as in your nerves are being affected, whether they're being pinched or closed off in some way, and the numbness will subside, and this doesn't actually cause any sort of damage, but it can be uncomfortable, and that uncomfortableness can be difficult to deal with, and it can become a distraction quite easily. So we want to find a position with our body that allows for our legs to also remain comfortable and unstrained. So what I do when I'm on the floor is I have a small pillow that I place underneath my butt that raises me up just a bit and levels my legs out, and it keeps them from being closed in too small of an angle. I don't know if that makes sense. I can't really illustrate it, but yeah. So find a leg position that's going to be comfortable for you, that's also going to encourage an erected upright position. Not something that you have to hunch forward to sort of maintain balance. If you're in a chair like I am, you can also sit cross-legged the way I am right now, actually. Or you can sit with your feet flat on the floor, legs, thighs parallel to the ground. Okay. And we can bring ourselves into a place of balance. Right? What we're going for here is an elongation and straightening of the spine, a pulling up of the body, slightly bringing together the shoulder blades in a comfortable way so that you're not pinching. And I'm holding my hands palms up in Jinin Mudra. You can choose a mudra of your liking, or no mudra at all. This is fine. And before we begin, we'll take just a moment to breathe. Just check in with the body through the breath. And as we begin to enter into our practice, we want to breathe using the diaphragm. Okay, we want to find there's the proper way to breathe that's going to have the most benefit. And that proper way is going to be using the diaphragm, pulling that muscle, series of muscles downward, pulling the air into the body. But the breathing in, while it's important, is not maybe as important to focus upon, other than the use of the diaphragm and the posture of the body, as it is the breathing out. And when I breathe out, I'm constricting the muscles of my abdomen just slightly, pushing the diaphragm up and expelling all of the air that I can, so that my exhale tends to be a bit longer than my inhale. Now, as our minds are focused on the posture of our body and the muscles being used in our breath, we'll find a point where it locks in and becomes more natural. At that point, you can begin to bring your focus through the body, relaxing all of the tension points, the shoulders, the neck, the eyebrows, the jaw, the thighs, toes, fingers, any place where you hold your tension, your lower back. And with that full, extended, proper out-breath that we just talked about, focus your thought on releasing the tension in any place that you find it. And each out-breath you can even repeat the mantra, I am letting go. Or simply letting go. We'll let the eyes close, or if you prefer to leave them open, this is okay as well. And let your gaze soften just a few feet in front of you. After you've scanned your body and released any tension points, we can bring our focus back to the breath. Let's begin with some rounds of Kapalabhati. We'll do short rounds. This is shining skull, or head breath. Pulling the front muscles stretched open. You can place the palms of the hands on the tops of the thighs, if you'd like, and push up, or remain in your posture, either way. But this is a forced exhalation practice. We'll be exhaling through the nose in brief, strong exhalations. Don't worry about the inhalation. It will happen naturally. This is what your body is geared to do, is to breathe in. Okay, let me demonstrate. This is a rapid succession of exhalations. If you have a heart condition or breathing condition and this becomes difficult or strained for you, please do not participate or cease participating if you already are. This is not about creating discomfort or pushing our body's limits right now. This is simply a breathing practice that helps to warm the diaphragm and settle the body. You can do the same practice very lightly. I'll begin by showing the practice as it is, and then I'll show a modification. So we'll exhale all of our breath. A gentle inhale. 3 deeper breaths. And in these 3 deeper breaths, we're modifying our position to feel the most benefit in our abdominals, our diaphragm. And I'll begin. So that was 15 exhalations in Kapalabhati. Now the modification, if you are having difficulty breathing, maybe you have clogged sinuses or a breathing condition or a heart condition, or any reason that would give you vertigo or dizziness, you can simply close your eyes and breathe in this fashion. It's a slight amount of pressure on the exhalation, not much. Be very gentle with yourself. But it's also a focus on the exhalation, focusing on bringing the contraction of the abdominal muscles and the diaphragm. Do 4 or 5, or do as many as you feel comfortable with. But if you are feeling at all any discomfort, please cease the practice and maybe talk to your healthcare provider, naturopath, or doctor, or whoever it may be. Okay, so we'll begin. We'll do a couple rounds of Kapalabhati. Let's start with 30 exhalations. Deep breath in, out. One more breath in and we'll begin. That's 30. Now just return to natural breath. And we'll begin round 2. We'll do 45. Breathe naturally. Last round, we'll do 60. And begin. Return to natural breath. And take notice of how the body feels. We'll go into our second practice. We'll do 10 rounds of Nadi Shodhana breathing, alternate nostril breath. The mudra here, or the hand position, is Vishnu mudra. It is thumb extended on the right hand, first and second fingers down, third and little finger extended, like so. We'll face the palm towards the hand, the palm towards the face, and we'll be switching back and forth between our nostrils, closing off, restricting air through one to the other. We'll begin with an exhalation completely from the left, inhale from the left, switch nostrils, exhale completely from the right, inhale completely from the left. Okay? And that's one round, and we'll do 10 rounds. Now the breath should be slow, controlled, and slightly extended. But you want to make sure that you're somewhat matching exhalation and inhalation from both sides. Right? This is a type of pranayama that engages equally two different nadis, the bringers of prana into the body. Right? And this is going to lead to balance. You may feel one side is more restricted than the other. This is natural, and that will shift throughout the day. So what I do is the side that's more restricted, the amount of time it takes to get a full inhale and full exhale, that's what I use for the side that's more free, so that I have balance. Breathe in. Close off the right nostril with the thumb and begin. Turn around. Release. Return to natural breath. And now have 4 minutes of silent meditation. And the sound of the bell bring you back into awareness of your body and the outside room. You can open the eyes slowly. And if you'd like, warm the palms. Give the body a quick stretch. Okay. Well, hello, friends. Now I feel like I'm here in a whole different way. Always nice to have that time to take for ourselves, take as a community as well, you know. See where I can see the chat. Good morning, Silas. The Spider-Man. Take a picture. Take a picture of your hand and send it to me, and I can see if it's a mudra that I recognize. But I'm pretty sure that it is. I just want to be sure, though. But yeah, Sutra Saturday. Before we get into it too much, I think we're going to be focusing on one mudra or one sutra today. Let me get my tea on. That's a delicious cup of tea. Wow. Maybe we should just get into it. Yeah, we'll just get into it. I was going to talk a bit. I got okay. I'm not. I'm going to talk for a second. Yesterday I went with kids to see Doctor Strange. You know, I talk about movies on here a lot. I like to go to the movie theater, and you know, with the new, there's a theater that we go to that you can get your tickets on an app on your phone, and you can choose your seats beforehand. So we always check the movie times and pick the showing that has, you know, as few people as possible. And so when I bought tickets for yesterday's showing, we were the only ones in the theater, and of course we got there and we got our seats, and then like 3 or 4 other people straggled in, and so the theater was very empty, which just feels fun, you know. It feels like you're in your own living room. It has the big lounging chairs, but you know, I'm just amazed and astounded at the information that's coming through in this new arc of Marvel films. It's really amazing. I talked a bit before about when we went to see Spider-Man No Way Home, and how deep the lessons really do get in that movie. You know, once we start dealing with things like the multiverse, we can think about these things on different levels, right? We can think about them from a quantum physics perspective of all of these possibilities coexisting at the same time. But there's another way that I see it too. You know, and I don't want to give too much away, but I think, you know, Spider-Man No Way Home's been out for a while, and there's a point where there's multiple Peter Parkers, right? There's multiple Spider-Men, all from different universes, meeting one another. And they're all of different personalities slightly, and they have different experiences, and they have different ways of going about their solutions, and they have different skills. And then in Doctor Strange, you know, a similar thing is occurring with, that's the whole point of the multiverse, right? They get to travel through and see all these different expressions of who they could be, all these possibilities. What if I had made this choice? Would this have happened? What if this were different? Then how would this look? And we can think about that on a large scale, right? We can look at that on this larger thing of like, okay, sure, this like head game of all these multiple different existences that I don't know about. But we can also bring that into our awareness right now. As in, how many me's are there? Right? How many me's am I trying to uphold in different situations? How many times am I finding myself changing my voice, changing my personality in different situations? I've got the things that I project in one group and the things that I project in another group, and those are different. I don't really quote gangster rap lyrics. Well, yes, okay, so I do quote gangster rap lyrics with my mom. She doesn't know what I'm talking about, but but my point is, when I'm with my mother, I may have a different persona and it may be very subtle, but recognizing this in ourselves. And it's not a matter of recognizing, oh, you're a hypocrite. This is not the practice. The practice is not judgment, and the practice is not shaming ourselves. The practice here is just like in these films where they step through the multiverse and they see these different possibilities and they can externalize and see themselves like a mirror and be able to study and learn from themselves. We can do this right now. And that's what meditation is offering us, right? We go inside of ourselves and we can have complete and total silence. We can completely disappear. Or in meditation, you can also have focus, 100% focus on one thing, right? So we can sit down and we can focus on this one thing. And in doing that, we can see it from all different sides, all different perspectives, right? And we can get to know all of its different expressions of self. And we can do that if we sit down and we look at our personalities, right? And instead of shaming them or living with guilt or shame because of them, oh God, I hate it when I'm with that person. I always become somebody I don't like. This is a thing that happens. This is a thing. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one. I'm sure that we have all done this, right? You have that one friend that for whatever reason, when you're with them, you start saying things that you don't really mean. You start doing things that you don't really enjoy. But for some reason, you're drawn back into this experience time and again. And this can continue our whole lives, and we can develop what's often called imposter syndrome, right? Where we feel like at any given moment we may just not really fit in and we're just faking it. Right? We get this sensation, oh, I don't really belong here. And they're going to find me out. They're going to find me out. And they're going to say, hey man, this is bullshit. Like, you're not who you pretend you are. You don't do keg stands, bro. Do you even lift? Whatever it may be. But here's the thing. When we start becoming aware of these expressions, right, we can start looking deeper into why it is. What's the reason behind that? What is the desire? What is the need? What is the ask? When you are with somebody and you are behaving in a completely different way, why is an okay question to ask? But more, I think it's more important than asking why you're doing that than it is to say, what are you feeling at that moment? Right? Because then it becomes something less dependent upon explanation, right? We're not looking for an explanation. Well, why? Why? Because of this and this, because I was never loved as a child, because of whatever it may be. We can have these explanations, but when we can look at the feeling, that's something that we can't manipulate. Right? Like, we can lie to other people, but our body doesn't lie to us. Our body does not lie to us. When we have a feeling, an intuition or a sensation that's deep inside that we repress for others, right? That feeling is telling us a truth. So we look at the feeling instead of asking why. You say, what? What is it? What is it behind that persona? And instead of judging it or not doing it, we can just start to understand it, right? Have compassion, and we can even play with it. We can dance in and out of the roles of our lives, you know? And that's okay. That's okay. You're not a hypocrite, or if you are, you're not any more of a hypocrite than anyone else. If you know who you are, then you can enter the dance from a completely different place, a completely different perspective, right? Now, when you know who you are only based off of how others respond to you, then all you know is that personality that you're inhabiting in that moment, right? Oh, me, I'm funny. How do I know I'm funny? Because you're laughing. That's how I know. So I must be funny, right? So then we stick with that. Well, I'm the funny guy. Or I'm scary because I can tell because you're cowering away from me. So who am I? I'm big scary guy, right? I'm in charge here because you're listening to everything that I tell you to do. I'm the boss. I'm boss man. And so we start identifying ourselves with that personality that we've taken on. And then we get into a trap where now I expect you to expect me to be this thing. Right? So when we can sit down and we can start doing the real identifications with those personalities, right? It's just like going through the multiverse. We can meet all of the different parts of ourselves, all the different expressions. And that's a pretty beautiful thing. And then when you can do that, you can only grow in compassion. You can only grow in compassion. I guess your choice is you could grow in judgment, right? You could see all the different things and you could continue to be disgusted. But there's, again, one more thing that you're embodying, one more personality that you're upholding, one more mask that you're slipping on. The mask of judgment, the mask of embarrassment, the mask of shame and expectation. That's not you either. Guaranteed. That's just an expression of something. So what is it? What is the feeling that you're having when you're sitting in those moments? Go there. Yeah. All that from a $7 movie at the theater for a matinee. It's a good movie, too. But this is something I've been pondering for a long time, a lot of years. I've been pondering these multiple personality disorders that we all have, right? So instead of thinking, well, I'm going to not have a multi-personality disorder, I'm going to just be myself. Okay, well, that sounds really good, but what does that mean? What does that mean? So how about we have a multi-personality order? And when we embrace, even momentarily, the notion that, yes, I tend to have multiple personalities. And then I can go into each of those in my own time and see what the expression is, see what the desire is, see what's at the root of each of those personalities. And I can give it what it needs. If it's something that's needy, I can give it space, I can give it time. But once I start finding that I recognize when those personalities are starting to want to come into play, right? When I'm starting to want to have small talk about something that I don't really care about, or when I'm starting to, whatever behaviors it is, okay, I'll have a drink. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll give me a drag of that. Whatever it is. Before I get to that point, I can recognize when that person's coming and I can say, hey, friend, it's cool. I got this. And then I can just be. I can just be. But not until I become friends with all of my different personalities, right? So, Sutra Saturday. First, let's give the invocation to Patanjali. Now, this is done, these invocations, they're done as a matter of respect and a matter of practice and tradition to recognize the teacher. right? And recognize the student, the positions, and the roles that we're playing in this moment, and how that's going to benefit us.
Yogena citasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yupakarutam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi Avahu Purushakaram Shankar Siddharinam Sahasra Shirasam Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
And that says, let us bow before the noblest of sages, Patanjali, who gave us yoga for serenity and sanctity of mind, grammar for clarity and purity of speech, and medicine for perfection of health. Let us prostrate before Patanjali, an incarnation of Adesesa, whose upper body has a human form, whose arms hold a conch and a disc, and who is crowned by a 1,000-headed cobra. Wow. Yep, let's do that. Okay. We'll get in. The last sutra that we did was Sutra 39 in Book 1, and today we're going to start with 40. We may only get to 1 today. We don't have a lot of time left, and I like taking our time with these. So, Yoga Sutra, Book 1, number 40. The yogi's mind, thus meditating, becomes unobstructed from the atomic to the infinite, or the mastery of one in union extends from the finest atomic particle to the greatest infinity. Okay. So what this is saying is that when we sit and find that that samadhi, that place of calm, right, where we then become the witness. We've talked about these meditative practices. We meditated on the inner light. We meditated on the teacher. We've meditated on the sounds and sensory objects around us. We've meditated on thought and the lack of thought. When we become attuned with the practices of meditation, where we can skillfully bring ourselves into meditation, and the skill just comes with practice. That's why it's called the practice, right? We continue these practices. There's never going to be a point where we've where we're doing beyond practicing. We're practicing this. This is something that we bring in and do. And what I mean when I say there's never going to be a point, what I mean by that is even the most masterful yogi, sage, still sits, still breathes, still follows the path inward. Right? The same thing we're doing every day. But as you practice more, you can become more fluent in the language of the self. Right? You can more easily cut out everything external and go completely inward anytime you'd like. And I think that maybe some of you are starting to see that in your practice now. I'm going to open the chat overlay here so that if anybody wants to bring up anything in this discussion about this sutra, I'll read it again. Right now I'm reading from Vivekananda's Patanjali Yoga Sutras. I believe that's in reverse for your screen. I don't know if there's a way I can change that. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. It's translated by Swami Vivekananda. Yeah. So one thing that stuck out to me, and it's simply because of my ignorance of the timelines and the history of the study of physics and atomic particles, was recognizing that Vivekananda's translation of the sutra, which I'll pull up the Sanskrit. Parama-mahattva-anto vaśīkāraḥ. Paramāṇu is primal atom, or the smallest things. Parama is greatest. Mahattva is magnitude. Antaha, or anto, is end or extension. Asya is his or her. And vaśīkāraḥ is mastery. So the original doesn't necessarily use the word atom, right? It just says the smallest thing. That's the nearest translation I think we have of the word paramāṇu. But I found it to be striking and interesting because, again, totally ignorant to the study of physics and when the timelines began. But for Vivekananda, who was writing this translation in the 1800s, would use that translation to talk about atomic particles. And I found it interesting because it really woke me up to, again, understanding that I don't know, number one, which, I'm already pretty good at recognizing I don't know anything about physics, the study of it. But it also made me kind of happy to see that there was a translation in a way that we can understand to our most modern sciences. Vivekananda was translating this sutra, thousands of year old sutra, at least 6,000 years, most likely, and translating it into the most modern understanding. He used atomic particle. He used our scientific understanding. And so when I read these sutras now, I can get really trapped in this language that is somewhat antiquated, and I can think to myself, well, this was a simpler time. This was a different time, But I understand it now, thanks to things like Vivekananda, that these things are timeless. And these lessons apply to the world you are in, not the world you come from, not the world we will be in, but the world you're in now, right? They apply right here, and they're written in a language that you can understand. And if you can't, you can read them from the source, and you can find the understanding that fits into your modern life. Now, I'm not suggesting that you change the sutras. I'm suggesting that you understand, you seek to understand. Seek to understand. And that kind of had a shift for me the first time I read Vivekananda's translations of these, when he starts talking about atomic particles, and I was like, oh, okay. It had nothing to do with that sutra itself. It was just the realization that this is important now and this is relatable now. And that was kind of cool. But on to the sutra itself. It's a very short one, very simple one, basically saying that when you have an attuned mind, you can see everything for what it is, from the smallest of things to the largest. Right? It's kind of like the zoom feature. We can zoom in all the way on the smallest part, or we can come back on the largest And I think you'll find what we do see is repetition. Right? It's like fractals. If anybody's familiar with a fractal, it's an image that repeats itself upon itself. So no matter how long you keep zooming in, you're going to continue to find the same patterns being formed. We've done meditations like this in this group, where we bring ourselves from the third eye into the eye that's approaching, and into the eye we get into the universe and all of the colors and all the shapes, and then as we keep zooming in, we come back into the planet, and from the planet into a person, and from a person into the eye. It's this concept, the continuation of the cycles, that from the smallest to the greatest, it's all part of the same. It's all part of the same. And so, this simple sutra takes something like the concept of individualism and pretty much eradicates it, in my understanding. Because if I'm looking at my hands, right, and I can go all the way to the smallest atomic particle in the tip of my finger, and it's the same atomic particle that makes up the rest of my body, and it's the same atomic particles that we can find making up everything else, right? Then what we're finding is there really is no separation, right? I read somewhere that something like 99% of an atom is empty space in the ways that we can understand it, right? So even everything that we are is just sort of melting through each other. But we have these defined boundaries, and it's something that I have a difficult time grasping and understanding when it comes to materium. I don't understand. And I'm totally okay with that. Totally okay with not understanding how we have all of these separations of my body, that's tree, this floor. The only thing I can think is this is a very well constructed dream. It's a very well constructed dream. And I'm just like a child in a sandbox. My mind is forming the sand into all of these different expressions. Right? But one thing I know is that when we think about doing things for one another, right? We're going to maybe charity, or maybe cause harm, and we think, I'm going to hurt that person, I'm going to hurt that thing, right? Or I'm going to save the day, I'm going to save that person and that thing. These are both things that people do. One thing that I notice is that sometimes we can use these practices to go deeper. Like, I think charity is much easier as a mental contemplation than violence in this case. But so let's say charity, right? I can see myself as giving food to the other, right? But when I start to think about things from the atomic level to the gross level, the magnitude of everything, and I zoom in and out, and I'm starting to realize in the zooming in and out, there's really no distinction, and that we all are actually all part of this one organism. So if my hand, right, were to remove, let's say, a tick from my arm, okay, now I'm not going to say to myself, my hand did the charity of removing a tick from my arm. You just think, oh, I just removed a tick from my arm. There was a parasite. I removed it. You don't think my hand removed the parasite from the arm as these two separate things. And when we can begin to zoom in and out, as you hand food to another person, you can start to see it as, I'm just feeding. I'm just feeding. And this is just sustenance. It's sustenance. It's the hand removing the parasite. It's the self feeding the self. We're all part of this greater organism of self. And that can change perspectives, right? That can change how we cause harm. That can change how we identify with one another. That can change how we have compassion for one another. And how we can understand one another in a much different way. And we can apply that same sort of charity, right? That same sort of activity or action that's being taken, and we can bring that inward. We can look inward and see what's happening inward with that same practice of giving of sustenance. Okay, so I'm looking inside of myself and I have all those multiple personalities we talked about, right? And there's the ones that I'm really ashamed of. There's the ones that are really in need, right? There's the ones that come from a place of suffering. The why me, why me? And I'm not mocking. I'm emulating the voice, I'm not mocking. Because sometimes I think, why me? Why do I have to feel this way? Why am I so alone? Why am I so lonely? This is a deep one. And sometimes I feel this one really deeply. I feel really alone. And then I have to remember that's not me being alone. That's an expression of a personality of mine expressing aloneness. Okay. There I am, atomic level. Pull back. Macrocosm, see the personalities, see the self, see the situation. There's a part of me that recognizes loneliness. There's a part of me that recognizes what it is to feel alone. And then I can start looking at that and say, what happens when you feel lonely? What do you do? How do you behave? Okay, so maybe you talk a little louder or talk a little more in social situations. Right? Because you're lonely and you're trying to get someone to connect with you. So that's how that personality behaves. And if I want to judge it, yeah, it's embarrassing. Oh man, I can't believe I just did that. But don't judge it. Look at it. Go, okay, this is what I do. Okay, so that's what that is. Loneliness is this type of expression. So now, when I'm sitting in a room and there's somebody who's loudly speaking, right, who's maybe showing off a bit, or maybe they're trying to get my attention a lot. Well, there's that personality. There's the loneliness. There's what it is to feel alone. And now I can recognize it's not my individual expression of loneliness. This is a shared expression of loneliness. Others do it. Others express this. Right? So then we have to figure out from that point, what is the sustenance? When I see someone who's hungry and I give them food, that's an action that is in the moment just providing sustenance. It's not feeding someone else. It's not feeding the self. It's just sustenance. So from that same withdrawn perspective, right? The impersonal, no story attached, just this is what I'm seeing. How do I attend to loneliness? How do I attend to fear? How do I attend to greed? How do I attend to anger? How do I attend to love? How do I attend to desire, to clinginess, to whatever that personality may be? And we can see the world as one entity with expressions of personality. And then as we move into that, everything we see becomes an expression of God. Because everything is this one giant mess of atoms, of tiny, very tiny particles that somehow create personalities, that somehow create entire dramas, right? Entire dances. And in my limited understanding, that can only be what God looks like. Because it's not me, but I'm part of it. Right? And it's not just you, but you're part of it. So it's greater than me, it's greater than you, and it's greater than the two of us combined. Because it's everything, all at once. I put my hands together in the recognized position of gratitude and prayer. And I'm grateful for the smallest of realizations and the largest of acceptances. And my prayer today is that may we all see ourselves in the other and see the other in ourselves. May we see ourselves in the other and see the other in ourselves. All right. Nobody feels like chatting this morning. That's okay. I'm going to close the chat off here in just a second, but I want to leave it open just in case there's anybody who has a last minute thought or something they want to share before we close off. This is not just about me. I haven't figured out yet how to make this more interactive on multiple channels than just opening the chat, but I'll figure this out one day. We have the technologies, so. Oops. Okay, there we go. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining today. We will be back on Monday for our usual program. Tomorrow is Sunday. We take tomorrow off. Thank you again. You can check all of our locations out on the internet through going to our link tree. It's linktree/Journey Home Meditation, and I believe it's linktr.ee/Journey Home Meditation. So check that out. That'll take you to our Facebook, our Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, and our Patreon, which helps support this whole thing that we're trying to build here. And we're very grateful for all of the support we receive, whether it's in whatever form it's in. The invocation today was shared by Veda Prana Yoga. Found Veda Prana Yoga. You can find them on the streaming platforms, wherever podcasts are. I found this one on one of my streaming platforms. This is the Patanjali invocation from Veda Prana Yoga. Veda Prana Yoga has a lot of really amazing things they're sharing, and we're grateful that we can share them here. And that does it for me. We'll see you all Monday morning, 7:30. All right. Hari Om.